In the film Devout by Diane Neal and Senna Gulzar, the GLBTQ community of Orthodox Jews is explored. A story is lifted up within this documentary about a lesbian woman who found herself married to a man with children and questioning her sexuality. She was angry at this community for forcing her to marry, and so she chose years later to leave her husband. Hani Getter tells a story of when she and her kids moved across the street from her son's best friend from the Jewish school he attended. Her son was thrilled. These boys used to play together, spend the night together, drive to school together, do everything together. And how amazing they would be living across the street from one another. And then something terrible happened. The mother of Getter's son, their son's best friend, found out that Getter was lesbian. She then spread that news to the whole community, and the community shunned her and demanded that she leave. Getter decided not to leave. She decided to speak to the rabbi and told him that she knew that he knew she was gay. She told him that the community was doing to her things that were not so cool. Asking them to leave, demanding that they leave. She said to him, "My children and I are Jewish. We hold Shabbat. My children pray. We are Orthodox. My children must remain at the school here or they will lose their Jewish identity. And I don't know how to fix that." So she said to him, "I need you to make this better. Please do something for me and my children." The pressure to get rid of this family stopped. The shunning stopped. Somehow, the rabbi made it all stop. This is the wisdom that Getter offers us. She says, the only way to shift a community, the only way to shift people's perspectives is to live amongst them and to be with them and to be one of them. Right now, it's a very scary time in our nation for some of us. Immigrant communities are scared. Black communities are scared. Muslim communities are scared. GLBTQ communities are scared. And yes, even those of liberal faith traditions like ours are scared. We're scared that our nation is changing, in the words of the Senator Bernie Sanders, from a democracy to an oligarchy. We're scared that more rights will be taken away and that those emboldened to be racist will continue with their racial slurs and hate speech and sometimes even their violence. We're scared that our nation is turning into one that threatened the world a long time ago. One in which groups of people were demonized while the world looked on. one in which it was no longer okay to be the religion or the culture of your ancestors, one in which being gay was not tolerated. And we see signs of our democratic nation, one in which many of our ancestors fought for, crumbling before our eyes. We're stunned. We're scared. And we don't know if living amongst them will be good enough. The other day, I watched an interview with a leader of what's known as the alt-right. His words frightened me because he claimed that white Europeans were the superior race, and he even mentioned Germany as being beautiful because of its churches and white race, and then he spoke of Syrian refugees changing Germany by being there. He spoke of not wanting any immigrants, not just undocumented ones, no immigrants in the United States of America. This reminded me of when Jews from Germany came on a ship to our shores. And what did we do? We turned them away. Then when the gas chambers were first tested, a man risked his life and went to Switzerland and said, "Please, the stories you've heard are true. They are burning bodies to heat the camps. Please invade us. Do something." That story made its way all the way to New York City to a rabbi who then started spreading that story. And what did the community say in response? That can't be true. Our government hasn't said anything about it. And we all sit here today knowing that it was true. We may know colleagues, friends, family members who tell us, don't be in despair, accept. It's going to be fine. Don't start worrying, right? And some of us may feel betrayed because the very principles our great nation stands for, our principles, our values of democracy and equity and compassion for our fellow human beings, is being threatened. Where do we go from here? Because, beloveds, we are here. It's time for each of us to say, what am I willing to do to preserve my values, our democracy? And there are poor who stand to lose even more than we do, as healthcare is threatened for millions now. And we're in the midst of a climate crisis, and there are those that are denying that climate change exists. And many of you talked about the beauty of the earth today. The science community has been clear. We must do something right now, to reverse the effects of climate change for our children and their children and their children. And some of us fear what will become of our planet in the future. And as water becomes poisoned and health is threatened, it is the poor who will suffer the most. And we are called to witness to those sufferings and future sufferings. Why? Because that's why we're here. That's why we're here. I was watching a movie about Pope Francis's life. And I saw a man who had witnessed to the sufferings of the poor for most of his career as a priest. And I found myself being thankful that such a man is now the Pope of one of the largest religions in the world. Perhaps there's hope when there are such leaders to help guide those who will destroy the democracy that we have come to love. Perhaps there's hope when such a leader speaks up for the least of these. Perhaps. The other day I learned that in one of our schools in California, a black child who's in middle school, who loved to go to school and learn because he felt safe and accepted and loved, these days doesn't want to go to school. See, now some of our children have become emboldened in this nation to use racial slurs that many of us were taught never to speak. He lives amongst them, and yet students in his school have called him horrible, racist names. And this is tolerated. And I say, what has happened to our country when even in California, racism is becoming normalized in our schools? Normalized. And in this community, as has been lifted up, a transgender accepts her no matter what. What a tragedy for those of us who have a saving faith, a beloved community here, a saving faith, and yet have not been able to spread our own good news to those who feel unloved by this society. It may be because we're scared, where we didn't turn away from all of the witnessing opportunities that we have in our community. And instead realize that when we turn away, it's a new day, beloveds. And it's a new day for us to name the majority of its citizens. We will not allow our youth to feel helpless and hopeless. We will not allow tragedies to occur anymore. Now is the time. Now is the time to preach our gospel, our good news of Unitarian Universalism, so that each person knows they have what? Inherent worth and dignity. So that each person knows, welcome the stranger. And we will answer the call to transform our nation into one that is greater than ever before. Greater than all the others, because why? That's why we're here. Only begun to love the earth. We have only begun to imagine the fullness of life. How could we tire of hope? So much is in bud. How can desire be of non-being? Surely it cannot drag in the silt all that is innocent. Not yet. Not yet. There is too much broken that must be mended. Too much hurt we have done to each other that cannot yet be forgiven. We have only begun to know